All right, so this is just a quick kind of help on page 394. If you're looking at 394 and you kind of have some questions or you're not sure what to do, let's just look at a couple together. So I'll kind of just skip around to kind of touch base on as many problems or different types of problems as I can. So remember, when there is a negative exponent, we don't want to leave the next negative exponent. We want to move the exponent to the other part of the fraction so that it becomes positive. So if it's on the top, we'll move it to the bottom of the fraction. If it's on the bottom, we'll move it to the top, and then that will change the exponent from negative to positive. So if we look at the first example, it is not a fraction, which means this is technically at the top. You can think of this as being over 1. So what we're going to end up doing, in order to make this exponent positive, we're going to have to move it to the bottom. So what that's going to do is that's going to take everything out of the top. So this 8 to the negative 1 is now going to move to the bottom. And since there is nothing on top, we will always put a 1 on top to make it a value, a fraction. We can't just have nothing at the top of a fraction. Okay, so then if we look at number 5, I want us to be careful about what we're moving. If we look at number 5 and number 7, they are both negative, but these are different situations. Number 5 means all of this is raised to the negative 1 power, so all of it would need to move. Number 7, it is only the C value that is raised to the negative power. So what we would end up doing here is we would only move C down below. The 4 would end up staying at the top, and now we would have C to the third be left or moved to the bottom. So then going back to number 5, since this is all negative, that means all of it needs to move to the bottom of the fraction. So we would have 3x to the first all move to the bottom. And then again, if there's nothing at the top, we always write a 1. So then I want us to be careful. Yes, a negative exponent moves things from the top to the bottom or the bottom to the top, but that does not mean everything moves. So for instance, if we look at number 10, a negative 18, this is not an exponent. This is a negative number. So that would stay at the top of the fraction, right? This is a negative number, not a negative exponent. Then my A is positive, so my A is going to stay at the top of the fraction. It does not need to move. The only thing here that needs to move to the bottom is that exponent of negative 3. So then B to the negative 3 is going to move to the bottom to become B to the third. So a negative number does not move, only a negative exponent. So if we go ahead and look at number 17, again, that negative in the front is not going to move. That does not change any numbers, so this would stay negative. Then my 9 at the bottom does not have a negative exponent, so it's going to stay there. My x at the top does not have a negative exponent, so it's going to stay there. So then if we look at what needs to move, I have y to the negative 1. That's going to need to move to the bottom. So this becomes y to the positive 1. When I move it. And then I have z to the negative 2, which needs to move to the top. So this is going to become z to the positive 2 once I change its exponent. Yeah, so when it's only the part that has a negative exponent that needs to be moved, not everything. So if we look at a couple more together just to make sure we're on the same page, if we look at number 20, so there's kind of two ways that you can do this. You can treat this as an entity and move it together, or you can distribute all of your negatives first, whichever one you feel more comfortable with. I would probably, because there's so many distributing, because there's so many parentheses, I'd probably distribute them all. So this would become w x to the negative 2, y to the negative 2, because remember we're multiplying this negative 2 in, over 3 to the negative 2, t to the negative 2, and v to the negative 2, because that exponent's going to go to every single term that's inside that parentheses. So I distributed in my exponent, I did my power to a power, and now I'm just going to move everything that's negative. So first I like to put the things that don't need to move in their place. In this case, that w is the only thing that has a positive exponent. So I don't need to move the W, I'm gonna keep it there. Now my X is negative, so I need to move that down. So that's gonna become down here to become positive. My Y is negative, so that needs to move down to become positive. So now I've taken care of everything. I've moved all the negatives at the top down. So now I'm going to move all the negatives at the bottom up. So 3 to the negative 2 is going to become 3 to the second, which I'll clean up here in a second because I like to put the numbers before the letters, but let's finish moving first. Then I'm going to move my T to the negative 2 to the top, so that becomes T to the positive 2. Then I'm going to move V to the negative 2 to the top, so that becomes V to the positive 2. So all I did was move all of my exponents so that they would become positive. So now the only thing I would clean up here is this 3. I put the numbers in the front. So I would make this 3 to the second, which you could also write as 9. Right? You know 3 to the second means 3 times 3. So if you wanted to write that as 9WT to the second, V to the second, over X to the second, Y to the second, you could. Either of these at this point are acceptable answers. So that's one way to do it. You can distribute in your negatives first. And in this case, since it wasn't going to every term, I would consider doing that, distributing it in. In the case of these bottom ones, where everything is being raised to the negative power, it's kind of up to you. You could flip the fraction first. So since they're both negative, since it's all negative, I could write this as 9C over 2A to the second. That way I turned that negative. I flipped both of them over to make this positive. It might be easier just for consistency to distribute the negative 2 into everything. So this becomes 2 to the negative 2, A to the negative 2 over 9 to the negative 2, C to the negative 2, and then flip everything over to make it positive. So this would become 9 to the second, C to the second, over 2 to the second, A to the second, right? I took both of these and I moved them to the bottom to make them positive, and then I took both these and moved them to the top. That's the same thing you would get here when you flipped them over. But that only works if the whole thing is being raised to the negative power, that you can flip it over. In this case, since that W wasn't being raised to a negative power, it needed to stay at the top. So you want to be careful about what you're distributing the negatives to. So going back to just doing a couple more, I'm just going to touch just kind of here or there, do a few. So if we look at number, let's say number 18. So again, I would start, there's nothing to distribute, so then I would start by writing all of the positive exponents and the numbers in the places that they belong. So like 4 is going to stay here, A is going to stay up here. Remember, it's only negative exponents that move, not negative numbers, so this negative 3 will stay here. So all of these are staying where they belong because they weren't negative exponents. So then I'm going to move this B to the negative 2 down so that it becomes positive. And then I'm going to move the C to the negative 2 up so that it becomes positive. And now I have moved all of my negative exponents and my answer only has positive numbers. All right, so hopefully that was enough examples to help you finish the rest of the worksheet on your own.